Good.
All right, well, I'm going to gavel this meeting to order. If you would all please stand, if you are willing and able, for the pledge. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening, thank you all for coming. First order of business is always our public comment period. We have no one who has come in to deliver public comment, so we'll move right to the report of the secretary. Have a motion, please, to approve the minutes of our last meeting.
I move to approve the minutes of the regular meeting of Wednesday, January 18th, 2023.
I'll second, Kate.
Okay, thank you. Comments or questions?
Just one comment and under number 1 of the second page, the first paragraph,
Yes.
just said there was a brief discussion of how the budget, district budget will impact the town budget, period. Mr.
Period,
Caplan.
yes. Yep. The period after the word budget.
Yes.
Good.
On page 4, under report of committees, number 1, almost the third sentence to the end. Through November, it was slightly negative, and a decrease in December. We expect, or we saw, or there was. I'm not quite sure what it should be.
I believe it's saw, although, or maybe expected at that time. Expected a decrease, that's probably what it should
Okay.
be. Anything else? Do you all want just a tiny bit more time to look at it, or are we good? All right, in that case, all in favor? That's 5-0. Thank you very much. Okay, that brings us to the report of the chair, and I have just the one item. Our next town officials meeting is scheduled for February 8th. That's next Wednesday, at the South Berwick Town Hall, 8:30. And I presume there'll be a Zoom link
That
forthcoming.
may be at the Suburb Police Station.
Oh, right, good point.
Yep.
They had started
I think they like the.
started moving meetings to
Yeah.
the conference room at the police station, that's right. So, possibly police station, good. Good. That concludes my report and brings us to the report of the superintendent.
Thank
Sir?
you very much. First thing on our agenda this evening is the transgender and gender expansive student guidelines. We met as a policy committee last week, and we finalized kind of the revisions that we wanted to make. I wanted to share with you kind of the work that we did as a committee, and we felt compelled to make sure we had a philosophical and legal background documented within this procedure. This is not a policy, so it does not require a vote. This is just an administrative procedure of guidelines that we, as suggested guidelines that we follow. So, Maine state law requires that schools support all students in their preferred gender expression. While we always want to seek to partner with parents and families in the interest of students, we recognize that not all transgender and gender expansive students experience the same level of safety in and out of school. As noted in the RSU 35 mission statement, our schools will seek to create a safe, inclusive, differentiated learning environment in which all students feel safe, heard, and supported in the development of their whole selves, emotional, physical, and cognitive.
Yep.
And so the idea is this is the law. There's no variation of the law. This is the expectation. Our goal is to always work hand in hand with parents and be transparent with our families. But we also need to understand that not all family situations are the same, and some students may not feel or may not be safe. And feeling safe and being safe are very different. Someone who's uncomfortable having a conversation is different than someone who's unsafe. And we really want to differentiate those things. We're talking about people being unsafe, not uncomfortable. Those are different things. So
Sure.
just wanted to be really clear about that.
Very good.
If I missed anything else, Rebecca or Jen?
No,
Sounds
that's good.
great.
Was this done in the same way as we typically handle policies, in that it's the yellow part that's highlighted that's different from what preceded it?
This
or-
is really the yellow, no.
Okay.
No. So we took a real deep dive on this.
Okay.
We looked for school counselor, administrative, we did, went to seek out students' feedback. We also spent a lot of time, philosophically saying, like, what do we want this to say? We always want to be transparent with our families, and then we took the legal guidance to be able to kind of give us the final overview of everything.
Mhm.
So there are some things that are really
Okay.
kind of cemented in law. Now, I want to be clear that there are some proposed changes that may happen due to Maine state law changing around definitions in particular.
Yes.
And so if that does happen, that would impact this procedure, and we would make a change. The reason, going back now 4 years ago maybe, that we went with a procedure is that a procedure does not need to go to the board for a vote, and we knew that laws may change, and this may be an evolving topic. And so that was why the choice was to go with a procedure rather than a board policy, just to kind of give you a historical perspective.
So I did read through this earlier today. It looks like a lot of really good work went into this. So
Thank you for saying that.
kudos to the policy committee and everybody involved.
And I just need to say this, is that Lisa was incredible.
Huge. Yep.
Incredible, working on the philosophical statement. I just really wanted to make sure, I know
Yep.
she's not here this evening, but I did want to recognize the hard work and just the great perspective that she added.
Yep, agreed.
Very cool.
Anything else? Okay.
Am I able to show this to the GSA?
Yeah, no, it will
Okay.
be on our website tomorrow.
Awesome.
Yeah, yes, absolutely. And I will say, when the GSA met with us, I think 100% of the issues that they had been, concerns, I should say issues, concerns that they had been addressed, with the exception of the legal definitions. The
Yeah.
legal definitions we could not change, but that is what's actually being reviewed by Maine state law right now, the way that the law is written.
Yeah.
They're looking at that, so
Yeah.
I feel really good with that.
This is awesome. I spent some time talking to them about, before they came and met with you, and this is amazing.
Awesome.
Thank you for that.
Okay, we had the opportunity to hear a little bit about Chartwell. So Karen reached out and said that she would love for the opportunity to kind of present to the board to say, where we are with Chartwells. And so we said, come on down. And so she's going to give us a brief presentation about kind of a review with our work with Chartwells.
Is it on? Okay. Good evening, thanks for having me. It's really great to see everyone. So I thought the best tool to show you all, the journey we've been on since the beginning of the school is to run through 2 slide decks, which are basically the 2 quarterly business reviews that we've held. So the Chartwells team met twice with Ryan and Heidi, and that's what I'm going to present to you. And feel free to stop during the course of it and ask any questions, and we'll take it from there. So I'll show you who my team is. You probably know most of them from the rebid last spring. Program development and highlights and results, and then what's coming up next for each QBR. All right, so these are the folks who support me. Tom O'Donnell, Chris Callahan is my direct supervisor. I know you've met him before. Chef Chase, Trudy, our finance expert. Samantha is our marketing person, and Sarah is our registered dietitian. These folks look familiar? Okay. And this, sorry, it's a busy slide, but it's basically a compilation of their visitations and support through November. Chris obviously comes up more often. And they may not just offer support by being here physically, but these are folks who I talk to and email frequently, multiple times a week.
Karen, can you stop right there for 1 second? Why is that important? That's important because part of our bid process, we were very concerned that the people who were supposed to be the support people, we were not getting that support.
Yep.
And so this allows us to be able to look at when people were there, we made sure they touched base with who they needed to touch base with. So this was one of our priorities as we went into the process.
Okay. Okay, so some program highlights, some menu development that went on in the fall. So we have basically like a boilerplate sales menu. We took that, we individualized it for our district. I added I added our other concepts such as Harvest of the Month, which is actually a main program, Mood Boost, Discovery Kitchen, and Veg Out, as well as some other concepts. Chef Chase came up and for our opening meeting and did some training, and then we make revisions for the menu based on student acceptance. These are some new vendor partners we have this year. You might recall from the rebid, Oakhurst was a top priority for you folks, as well as bringing Stonyfields into the district, so we've done that. Fresh Point is our new produce vendor out of Hartford, and we did a POS upgrade this past summer from NutriKids to Mosaic. Also, on top is the USDA DoD Fresh Produce Program, so that's utilizing commodity dollars, and we allocate that to getting, it's basically another produce vendor, except the purchases are through commodity dollars. So we did a lot actually, of refreshing of just the appearance of the cafeteria. So this is what some of our cafeterias look like. Top left-hand corner is Central. The middle on top is the pizza line at the high school. The one on the top right is the entryway to the Elliott cafeteria. Bottom left is the middle school cafeteria, as well as the bottom right. Okay, so this program is called Environments, and specifically the market is the specific theme. So it's not just the signage, it's also, or I shouldn't say the station signage, but there's also point of sale signage as well. So associate training and development is always important too. So here's a timeline of our meetings and training topics that we've had. So we always have an opening meeting. Sarah and Chef Chase came to that one in August. And we just continue training. And there's always on-the-job training every time I visit a school, of course, but these are formal meetings. A couple that I want to point out is in November, there was sort of that ad hoc meeting with Gina Brodsky about students mattering, and a good number of my staff were able to make that meeting, and it just had a great impact on us. So Gina was able to be part of our wellness night as well. So I think she's a tremendous resource to the district. Another thing I want to point out in November is, and we covered it in the opening meeting in August as well, is our station standards. And that means how the food is presented. And I know as part of the rebid, you folks went to North Reading, and that had an impact on you and something that was important to you. So it seems that during the pandemic, our presentation standards kind of like went by the wayside because food was presented and served in a completely different way. So now that we're back to the pre-pandemic serving style, we want to bring back the presentation practices, because it's a first impression thing when students come in and see what the food looks like before they even sit down to eat it. Sustainability and recycling efforts. So Oakhurst and Stonyfield are local producers and vendors. Harvest of the Month features locally grown in Maine produce. Veg Out is a concept that we've introduced at the high school. So it encourages less meat and more plant-based center of the plate meals. I have gone to the Elliott Agricultural Commission meeting and made connections, and that's something I'm going to revisit in the spring. I reached out in the fall and actually in the winter, and I just didn't hear back from anyone. I think maybe they're more into the planning than the growing phase this time of year. Sourcing recycling stations and possibly sourcing like the Impossible Burger, introducing that. Here's Peter and I doing a Mood Boost event last fall at the Elliott School, of course. I mentioned the wellness fair. So Chef Chase and Samantha came up to assist, and on the right is the chef here at the high school, Andy DeRoche. And so we were part of the wellness fair, and we were very well received. It was so nice to hear people say, oh, I didn't know you served this caliber of food in the district. So we were very proud to present several of our concepts there. You can see the Mood Boost and the Smoothie Station. Last fall was actually, I can't remember the week, it was in September, National School Lunch Week. It's an annual event. So it's just to really promote school lunch. It started with actually President Kennedy, and it's just to promote school lunch throughout all the schools in the country. And then on the right is the Smoothie Station served upstairs at the lobby breakfast station. This is the harvest of the month. This is an example of it. Summer squash. I don't recall what month that was. Oh, actually, it was September. And there's a student from the middle school eating zucchini bread. So that's done throughout the district. Action stations are a regular thing. This is, I believe, the Bibimbap Bowl, which is also one of the veg out plant-based entrees. So we continue doing this. It's an action station that students can choose what they want. And it seems it's very popular at the middle and high school. Again, this is an example of the veg out butternut squash quesadilla with cilantro brown rice. So we were chosen as one of 100 Chartwell's accounts across the country to be a Smoothie Station pilot account. So we got all this equipment, the merchandising, as well as the production equipment, and a collection of recipes to serve smoothies. And they've gone over very well. It's something we do 3 times a week here at the high school. We serve them upstairs and downstairs. And then the picture with the top right is when some folks from the Maine Dairy Council came down. They were very excited and they wanted to see our Smoothie Station in action. So that's who that group is.
Karen, can I just ask a question? Are the smoothies, remind me, an additional charge to students, or are those not?
No, they're part of a reimbursable breakfast.
Okay.
If a student wants to buy a second smoothie, then it's
Yep.
a la carte.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so that with a grain makes a reimbursable breakfast.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So participation has increased nicely from last year to this year so far. It's up 9 percentage points. And it continues to grow, and some of the major influencers are the having the breakfast served in the lobby and the Smoothie Station, and continuing to introduce new menu items and those concepts that I mentioned, whether it's veg out at the high school or Mood Boost at the elementary school. We have a new deli at the middle school that's very popular. Another thing that we'd like to roll out at the middle school, which I believe happened pre-pandemic, was a breakfast cart to be served during their snack time, around 9-ish. So it could be a second chance breakfast for those students who didn't come in time for breakfast, as well as if they just want to buy an a la carte snack. So I'm meeting with Kevin on Friday, and we're looking to roll that out as soon as possible.
Yep.
Karen,
I
what
like
would
that.
be an example of something on the breakfast cart? Just curious.
It could be, you know, it would be a reimbursable meal.
Like a brown bag type, like
Yes.
grab and go?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not quite at that point yet.
Okay.
That's actually the easy part, putting the menu together. It's
Yeah.
more the logistics.
It's the logistics.
But
It
would
used to be like a juice, a granola and a yogurt.
Right,
That
or-
would be,
Or a breakfast parfait,
yeah.
or possibly, a breakfast sandwich, wrapped in
Sandwiches would
foil.
be awesome.
The tricky
Yeah.
part with the cart that we had is it had to be kind of like the grab and go type of meal, so
Right.
we're not spoons and forks and, making messes, and so that was part of the balancing act we had to do a few years ago.
I think this will be great with, especially with the buses that are arriving so late, so some kids don't get a chance
Yeah.
to
Right,
grab something. So,
right.
The breakfast sandwiches are very popular. That's nice to hear. Yeah.
So what's next? And we've completed some of these things, because like I said, this is from November. We wanted to run a student choice in December, but with the profound illness that was going around the district, it wasn't possible, so we've rescheduled that for March. We're going to launch a new concept called Global Eats, so it's food from around the world, if you will, and also I want to add that Kelly Glynn here at the high school has approached me about her, a sort of a different type of global awareness program that they're doing here at the high school, and would like me to dovetail along with that as well in March. So we've looked at making some facility improvements at the high school and central school, so we've concluded that we'll move ahead with revising and renovating the serving line at central school and hold off for another year at the high school.
Karen, just for clarity, I thought at the high school we decided that we were just going to kind of try to rework what we currently have to be able to make it a little bit more efficient time-wise, rather than...
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. We're getting some quotes on doing some electrical work. We have some ideas, depending on...
So small renovations to be able to speed up the line so kids aren't waiting in line as much. Like that.
Yep.
That's the big issue right now. So.
Right. Possibly a new dish machine at, we actually got a new dish machine over the summer at the middle school. And like I mentioned, the new deli unit. And we may possibly need a new dish machine at Great Works. Okay, so that's that one. And how am I doing on time?
A couple more minutes.
Okay. So this one has a few duplicate, because it's sort of continuing. Again, support team visiting. More, let's see. In December, which was a crazy month, we all remember that, right? Or don't want to remember it. But instead of having a meeting, my team and I got together for a social event at the Outlook, and it was just really nice after everything we've been through in December to just get together during the break, actually, and just have a social event together. So that was really fun. Let's see, unfortunately, we had to cancel our meeting in January because it was supposed to be, turned out to be a snow day, but we'll pick up where we left off this month. So Discovery Kitchen is a major concept with Chartwell's K-12, and this is a summary of what we did in November, December, and January. So the theme in November was Let's Get Cooking, very much oriented toward Thanksgiving. So the bottom left is a picture of Thanksgiving served at Elliott Elementary. In December, it's Spice It Up. So we've got some pork vindaloo served at the high school. And then January was the Great American Road Trip. So items from across the country introduced to the students. We had walking tacos at the high school and the middle school. And Great Works did family style service, I think twice now, right, Jerry? To get them ready for their trip to Mount Washington. Like I mentioned, it's we do a Harvest of the Month theme every month. So there's our friend from the Elliott School serving veggie cheese potato. Potatoes grown right here in Maine. Who knew? So some communications I've established with the families. I put out a newsletter in December summarizing what we've done. I sent out a survey to the elementary school parents, and I got some really good feedback. And I have an action plan put together, and I just need to get the communication piece out now to the parents as a follow-up as to what we've done with their input. Okay. And then we also sent out a meal value flyer, which summarized, the value of, first of all, reminding families that meals are at no cost, and summarizing the value, especially with inflation, of students eating in school instead of packing a meal for them. In interaction with you folks, we went on a little tour in December, and that was a lot of fun, and shout out to Ryan for driving us. So that was a day that we were doing a Discovery Kitchen event. So you sampled the corn and pineapple salsa. And that's a picture of a typical extra fruit and vegetable bar. That one happens to be at Central. And that's the type of thing that I want to communicate out to parents when they say, oh, I really want my child to eat more fruits and vegetables, or I really wish you served more. I think that picture kind of sums it all up, that yes, we do, and they're fresh, and they're colorful, and they're crunchy, and, I want to make sure parents know that. Okay. And thank you again, I know it was last month, but thank you again for your support for Chartwells. We continue to do action stations. We continue to do the smoothie station, still just as popular as ever. Participation is still strong. It's a little bit of a seesaw thing. It seems like in any given month, when the participation at the elementary schools goes up, the secondary schools go down, and vice versa. I'd love to have a month where they both go up. Let's see. Coming up next, we're going to reschedule the student choice event at the high school for March. And then these are a couple, Smart Snacking and Plant Power, the next upcoming Discovery Kitchen themes. And then we're going to be doing Mood Boost in the elementary schools again. I have an intern starting tomorrow. She's a UNH student. Her name is Carmen Roderick, and her major is Nutrition and Wellness with a minor in psychology. Again, Global Eats, like I mentioned before, and other things that I've already covered in essence of time. Oh, National School Breakfast Week is March 6th through 10. So it's kind of like the counterpart to National School Lunch Week. We talked about facilities. Any questions or comments?
You've done very well, thank you. You've done a lot of work. Do you think the kids actually know that they can get like free smoothies and breakfast items and lunch items? Do you feel like that, yes, the communication's going out to parents, but do you think the actual kids know?
I think maybe it depends at what age. Sometimes there's some confusion, such as when a student tries to buy a second smoothie, but I don't know. Maybe
Yeah, I
the
don't
principals
know.
might know that.
My
High
kids-
school
Scares me,
kids-
because I wrote down right here, before you even said that, yeah, we need to do reminders that we have free lunch and breakfast for everybody. That the
Yeah,
state
'cause I
of
don't
Maine
know,
has sponsored that program, and so that, that's not at a cost to the district, that's something that the state of Maine has voted on and passed into law. So we need to do a better job of getting that word out to people, so that was,
High school kids definitely know.
Yep.
I
Right.
think that is like an established thing, and I can't speak for the other schools, but I know that my peers are aware that
Is it
the meals
because
are
it like
free.
spread, like, so when you saw the smoothie station in the front, was there a sign that said it included with your, whatever?
I just
Whatever.
automatically assumed that it was a meal.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, and I got the confirmation when I went up the first time I got one.
Okay,
So
yeah.
it was a fair assumption, I think.
Right. We have signage that says, at the smoothie bar, that says, today's smoothie, and we say what the flavor is, and then we say, the smoothie plus a muffin makes a complete meal.
Oh,
Yeah, that
Yeah.
was the big indicator.
oh.
Yeah.
but it's a different issue when you're at the Great Work School
Yeah.
and Central School, because it's really about making sure parents know that, because they may be sending the child with a lunch, or not know that that's an option, so, yep.
Is
Thank
there
you
a
very much.
possibility of expanding the smoothie station next year to the middle school?
I would like to.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, the middle school has some, seems like it's got some electrical infrastructure problems in the kitchen.
Okay.
So we have to be really careful about how much power we run.
Okay. And then at the elementary schools, I know that when they go through the line, they can take as much fruit or vegetable as they want. But unlike at the middle school and the high school where there's that bar of fresh fruits and veggies that when we did our tour, we did see kids going up and accessing that bar after they took their meal. Is there some sort of a setup or some sort of cart that somebody can take around or sort of sits in the middle of the lunchroom? I don't know how that would work at the elementary school. Just thinking they might be more apt to take something, because they're sort of seated once they're at the elementary schools, right? They go through and then they're seated for their meal. is there some sort of access for them to get more fruits and vegetables or make it available to them that way?
I've seen students come back up.
Okay.
And ask for more.
Okay, okay,
Right, Peter? I've seen
Okay.
that at, yeah.
okay,
Is there
perfect.
like a, can we put up a sign that's like seconds or welcome to seconds or, yeah, I don't know.
Or is there a reminder of any sort or something? I don't know. I don't know if
Yeah, I mean, I
kids,
think we always be clear, but we definitely allow seconds.
Okay.
And that's the
Okay.
whole idea of the program, right? So I think this is where the advertising comes in. If extra is about trying to encourage kids to have fruits and vegetables, then we need to do a better job of just making sure kids know that that's an option, or families know that that's an option.
Right.
I think, particularly at the elementary school, because that's just, it's really more parent-driven than maybe, you know, a child, you have your lunch,
and that's that.
that,
Right,
sit down and eat, you
Right.
know, so.
okay.
Perfect. Thank you,
Great,
Karen.
thank you, Karen.
Thank you.
I was just gonna
Thank
say
you
real
very
quick,
much.
I love that you have an intern coming into the high school.
Yeah, that's
Yes,
pretty cool.
That's great.
What is her contribution gonna be and how much
Good
will she be
question.
seeing? That was part question A, and then B was, has there been any conversation about students being engaged in the kitchens at all? Like, you know, a student per lunch per day, kind of like a special opportunity? I know that was something when I was in school, and some other schools offer that as well, where just like each student gets one lunch shift in the kitchen type thing, or a breakfast, and can work with the chef or, you know, help.
Yeah.
I don't know if
I
that's.
don't know. I don't know the
I'm
the
just kind of
rules
throwing that
related to
out there
that.
when you
Yeah.
I
talked
think there
about
might
the
be some
intern.
liability issues that we would have to look into for that, you know.
Okay.
So certainly, I think
Yeah.
there's ways to get kids more involved in
Yeah.
the process of breakfast and lunch.
Yeah.
And have a better relationship with the kitchen, but I think we have to be. sit
Something
down
that
and
we
kind of
looked into.
Make a plan about it, yeah.
Yeah.
Could high school students TA for the lunchroom?
You could, but you would probably be limited in the
Yeah.
capacity that you could do, you know, and so.
Yeah.
What would that look like for someone who might be, you know, in a foods program
Yeah.
at SRTC, right?
Yeah.
That might be a natural segue,
Yeah,
so.
because I just found out like you could TA for like Miss Brooks,
Yeah.
and so yeah.
Ah.
Yep.
You do the cart
Yeah.
and go around for
Yeah.
seconds.
Yep.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Karen.
Oh, thank you.
Thanks.
How do I disconnect?
Next on our agenda is, I just want to give you an update on the MSMA insurance settlement. So as you may remember, I shared with you that when we had the mold issue back in September of 2021, we received partial payment, but we also knew that there were some issues that we had to rectify that were behind the walls and some more mitigation that we needed to do. So there was a question whether we were going to get reimbursed, as the second insurer was hedging, giving us about $81,000 that they owed us. So I did a quick count. After about 25 phone calls to MSMA, Anita may not want to talk to us for a little while. The Benefits Trust has agreed to pay that, and then they can manage, I don't know how they worked out with the secondary insurer. And so we hope to have that check. We signed paperwork for it today, so we hope to have it in the next week or so. That money, once it's received, will go to last year's budget because that was when the incident took place. And so it wouldn't impact this year, it would go to next year and fall to the fund balance,
Yep.
basically. Ryan is going to just give us a brief review of the ED 279, the subsidy update just recently came. So we wanted to share that with you as part of our budgeting process.
So the ED 279s were released on 125, which is about a week ago. We've had time to be able to kind of go through, compare them to the prior year to try to see if we have an increase or decrease in state subsidy. For this current year, if you go to page 5, that's kind of like where you can see the total state subsidy that we will receive. Down towards the bottom of the page, it's a green bar. It says adjusted state contribution. And we're going to get we're going to get exactly $12,558,532.29. Compared to what we received for the current year, it was $12,314,700.11. So it's an increase of $243,832.18. So just some highlights, kind of like some major changes that got made to the subsidy formula that resulted in us receiving some additional funds. The computation of the teacher benefits basically the computation of benefits, which is on the first page under letter C. The state did increase those percentages pretty significantly. They're still below what the district pays for those benefits, but definitely much more in line or much closer to where we are. Between 5 and 6% for most of those were an increase, so that was a pretty significant increase. Another area, which was on page 3, where we saw significant increases were in the area of special education. I would anticipate for the next couple years, we're going to continue to see increases in special education, just due to, there's basically 2 areas of special education where we're going to see increases, some for the high cost out of district allocation, and others, we added the IEP coordinator this year. That will get reported this year and will affect our subsidy again next year. So we should see some increases from our special education costs. Just one last note on the page 4, just looking at our enrollments at each municipality and the 3-year evaluations and the mill rates, and just looking at our preliminary figures. I can't give the exact percentage increases for the different communities, but can say that last year there was a pretty big discrepancy between how the tax increase impacted South Berwick and Elliott. This year it should be pretty equal as far as percentage. So dollars won't be the same, but the percentage increase for the communities looks like it's going to be much closer. I think 2 years ago it was almost exactly 50-50. I think this year the tax percentage increase should be pretty close to each other in both communities. So once we have the final numbers and the budget presentation, we will be able to give you the exact figures, but just kind of preliminary as we're working through numbers, it looks like it's going to be a pretty equal increase in both communities. Any questions?
So in order for transparency, what we're trying to do is take you through every step of the budget process. So we start, when we had the discussions in October, we talked about enrollment and then how we want to refine that enrollment number. Then we talk about, how we do, the calculations of the supply accounts. Then, now we're talking about this is what the state's telling us for our money so that we start to build the budget. And then when we meet again in March, that's when we'll present the overall budget. So just trying to be very clear and deliberate with kind of how the process works to be able to help people kind of guide them through this process so it just doesn't feel overwhelming. And so there is a lot that goes into this. There's variables that we can control. There's variables that we can't control. And so the mill rate is one of those variables we have no control over. That's something that the state sets in order to be able to come up with the money to be able to pay for these things. So.
And just a note, our last town meeting, the towns asked us to reach out and kind of give them a heads up. I plan on doing that tomorrow. I just wanted to present these figures to you folks first.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Believe it or not, we are going to talk about next school year right now. And so just as a reminder, we are a member of the Sanford Technical Vocational Center. And so part of that partnership is that we need to, and I believe there's 8 schools total that send students to that building. There's an agreement that we have to have that we can only have 5 days amongst all of the schools out of sync with each other. And that's a pretty daunting task because, you have some contracts that say, I think it's, it might be whatever. Massapequa, it might be York that says you have to have the Friday off before you go vacation. That's something that's in their contract. And so there's language like that amongst all contracts. One of the big areas where we run into this is that, I feel really strongly that if we're going to have people in November in our buildings voting, that's probably not the best time to have school at our middle school. And so those are the types of things where we have some concerns and we have to balance those things out. So this is a preliminary calendar. And so this is kind of our first bite at the apple, so to speak. And so just to kind of highlight initially running the numbers, and so why am I doing this now, is that last year I really waited on the SRTC, and that process took a real long time, and it wasn't until May that we set our calendar. That just didn't feel right, and so I want to be on top of it, and so that we can make sure that we have this information and that we can get this calendar out to our community by April at the absolute latest. But we would have 2 professional development days in this draft calendar, that Monday and Tuesday of the last week in August. We would have 2 days of school. The first day of school would be August 30th, and we would have the August 31st. It would be 2 days of school for students. That Friday would be a day off. And then those first 2 days kind of gives us the ability that if we want to do some orientation programs, that really gives us the opportunity to do that. And so that was really successful here at the high school. October 6th is a day that is off, and that's a day that the statewide vocational programs have a competition, and so the SRTC asked that all schools have that Friday off, and so we have that Friday off. That would still be a professional development day, but that's why that 6th before Indigenous Peoples Weekend is a date that's circled. November 7th, which is voting. I have that as a day that right now that I had circled as this day would be a professional development day for our staff. The 10th would be the Veterans Day celebration. It would be Veterans Day observed. And then if we go into December, this is one of those days that fluctuates with buildings. And so some districts give the 22nd off, some don't. And so that was one of those days that we weren't really sure how to manage. We were making the draft, so we decided to count it as a day off. What was happening is that if we had that day, we were getting out much earlier than some of the other districts. And so that created some issues with the SRTC calendar. And so we left that as a no school day. That pushed us a day out in June. The big issue with that is that hypothetically, if we didn't take that day, the last day of school would be June 6th and graduation would be the 7th, and we want to make sure that we have school the day of graduation. That's an important part of this, and so that's one of the variables that we're working through. February break, April break are pretty standard. Memorial Day, and then our last day of school would be June 7th. So remember, it's a 181-day contract for our teachers, so we have basically 4 professional development days over the course of the year that we would look into, and then we also have parent-teacher conferences as well.
John, I just have a quick question about September 1st. The kids are not in school that day?
Yeah, that's been kind of a pattern for the schools that start prior to Labor Day. And so, again, this is a tricky one because there are some contracts that people who are in that, involved with the SRTC, whose contracts say you can't start before Labor Day. And so that allows people to start ahead of time, but still have that kind of that one day. So that's kind of been that common day that people have taken off just to be able to accommodate the calendar a little bit. So there's part of this that makes no logical sense. And so my argument was last week is that can we not go to the state of Maine and not worry about the 5 days not being aligned, instead say, can we just say that if the SRTC is in session, we will send our kids? That would just make, because the big idea is we want to get kids there, right? Rather than playing with the schedule. And so that does not meet their criteria right now. We have spoken to Kathy Sargent and asked Kathy if we could go to the state and just kind of plead our case. And I offered that I'd be more than happy to go up with her and just be able to say, look, can we look at how we do this a little bit differently? Because this gets really tricky when you start adding in the negotiated agreements and everything else. And it's great that you get it down to 5 days, but we're not even talking about if Massapetag has a snow day and and we don't, or Sanford has a snow day and we don't. I mean, the schedule gets askew anyway. And so if they are part of the Dover vacation, the expectation is that they'll go to school during February vacation when they have classes there. That's just part of when they sign up for those programs that we do that. So we're trying to have a little bit more commonsensical approach. The goal is that we'll take this back for our meeting on the 15th of February so that everybody will bring a draft calendar so we can kind of find out where everybody is once we put the whole picture together. Any questions? Don't pay any attention to the conference dates down below. Those are last year's dates. That we haven't even got that far yet. This is just more one to give you a chance to take a peek at it and get your thoughts, if that made sense to everybody here. Any questions? Again, 181-day contract with our teachers, and so once we kind of establish this, then we start to kind of look at like what do those days look like, and we'll start breaking those down. I did get some feedback from the middle school, from the principals sharing the fact that the staff were concerned that they did not have enough time for parent-teacher conferences at the middle school. Just mathematically, if there's 10-minute conferences and there's 7 hours of conferences, they need to have about 75 slots. They only have 60 slots, so you're banking on 15 people not showing up. And so one of the things that we're looking at is that we have some collaborative planning time. Do we cut into that a little bit and elongate the conferences? And so that would kind of come after we set the schedule, but that's just one of the issues that has kind of come up. I did get some feedback that there was a parent or two that did not get a spot for conferences in the fall at the middle school. Typically, it doesn't happen in the spring because the spring conferences aren't quite as widely attended. But just want to be mindful of that with our parents.
Well, I think what happened is they sent out an email saying there were 50 spots available, and so people took those. And then I also reached out to try and get a spot, but I talked with many parents who said we didn't realize we could have done that.
Yeah.
So I bet there were more than one people that didn't get, more than one family. that
Oh,
didn't
yeah,
get.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
And you know, typically, not everyone's going to go. You know, there's going to be a certain percentage of
Right.
people who aren't going to attend. But you also want to make sure you have enough room that if everybody does attend, we have enough
Yes.
spots for it. And so when
Yes.
you just start doing the math, if you do, you know, let's just say a 7.5-hour day, you know, 7 times 6 is 42 spots, plus another half hour is 45 spots total. You know, you start to get into a really sticky wicket. And so just trying to be mindful of that. Middle school conferences are the most difficult because you have the teaming approach as well. And so you also don't want to make it such a short period of time that it's not valuable. And so that makes it a little bit trickier.
No, I mean, for rescheduling, I know, like at other districts, like teachers would offer like before school or after school or during their planning time as a makeup.
Yep.
I mean, do we do that here?
That's part of our contract, yep. So the parents want to meet with teachers, they make themselves available. Yep, that's part of our negotiated agreement, yes. Yep. And teachers are great about it. It's just one of those things that, let's address it now. We have some options. Let's look at it now as we kind of build the calendar for next year.
Build
So,
the room, yeah.
Yeah. Any other comments about the schedule? Okay, number 6, just a reminder that next week, we have our FNF meeting at 5:30. I will hope to have some exciting news at the FNF meeting regarding some lighting possibilities. We've got some great news today, so we're really trying to be as proactive as we can be to try to find ways to save money and also be conscious of our environment. So we're working really hard at that right now, so I think we have some good news, but I'm not quite ready to share because we don't have all the information yet. But so far, so good. And also just a reminder that Dan Rose will meet with the board from 6 to 6:45, and that's just basically kind of do the board orientation, kind of, you know, the areas of the upcoming that may be concerns or things that we want to talk about. So we'll do that. I'm not sure if that's going to be in person or if he's going to do that remote, but we'll work that out at that time. The last thing, and I say this with a smile, I probably will never talk about snow days again at a board meeting because I said, oh, no, we're not going to cancel it the night before, and then all of a sudden, last week, it was a nightmare. And so I do want to reiterate, I did get some upset emails from people in Elliott, and just please be mindful that if it's an inch of snow in Elliott, that doesn't mean it's the same snow levels in South Berwick. And so South Berwick was a nightmare.
We had 30 roads closed.
30 roads closed. We had, at one point, 80% of the residents of South Berwick did not have power. On that Tuesday, when we kind of, again, I sent an email out saying, this is what we're going to look at, be prepared that we may have a delay, and then I got the phone call from the town manager saying, please don't open, and so I sent, again, trying to be proactive, then I'm like, oh gosh, great, put another email out. But that morning when we woke up, we did not have power in 4 of our buildings until noontime that day. And ironically enough, the middle school never went out. And then all of a sudden, that Monday night, it went out at 9:30, and it was out until noontime the next day, which was, the irony was there was 50 CMP trucks in the parking lot of the middle school with no power, which I just think about, that kind of made me chuckle a little bit. You have to laugh at that point. So anyway, so we did our best. We've used 3 snow days so far. Typically, we plan to use 5. And so we're, obviously want to be very conscious of that. Again, I get a lot of questions about Thursdays because people don't think of it right off the bat, but it's one of those areas that's really tricky, and I would do anything I could do short of putting people at risk to not do a delayed start on a Thursday. That creates a nightmare for families, because the way we would have to do that would be literally everybody would start 2 hours later, but then they would still follow the delay schedule in the afternoon. So basically, our elementary school students would be going in for 4 hours, which makes absolutely no sense. So we have a natural 1-hour delay built into every Thursday. That's how I look at it. And so that's how I would manage that. And so then you have to make the tough decision whether you'd cancel or not. To do a 2-hour delay on a Thursday is really disruptive to a lot of things. I just want to remind people of that. So, Annabelle.
All right, so I have, Rowan did her sports and student gov report. Starting off with sports, the Nighthawks beat Biddeford 5-1 on Saturday. Then they beat Mount Ararat, Lisbon, Morse, and Hyde Eagles 3-2 in overtime on Tuesday in Lewiston. And they play York tonight at 7, so we will have that update next week. The Marshwood girls ski team got second overall in their GS, which I believe is Grand Slalom. She knows skiing. Giant slalom. She knows skiing, I don't. Race on Monday. The Marshwood boys ski team got 4th on Monday at the same race. Girls basketball beat Bonnie Eagle last night 55-51. They also beat Kennebunk 52-35. And there's some more here. The girls took home a massive win with an almost 40-point lead against Noble on the 24th, and they beat Morse 48-23, so they are on a big win streak. The boys basketball team lost last night to Bonnie Eagle 41-27, but they did beat Noble 64-57, as well as beating Kennebunk 67-37. Both teams are looking very strong going into playoff season. As for student government updates, Student Gov is back in action after midterm week. Hadley Pruitt and Rowan are working with Mr. Buzzle to finish planning the winter carnival. I was just made aware, though, that it will be pushed to the spring, so I will have to inform them of that. But it is still in full motion, and we will be having a pep rally the Friday before February break just to keep school spirit high. The mural that has been in the works for a long time is just about ready to be put onto the wall and get painted. And the dress code revision is on its way, and Eva Therian presented at the last policy meeting and joined the subcommittee for it. Now on to extracurriculars. Rehearsals for Frozen are in full effect, and so are the music pit rehearsals for the show. The District 1 music festival happened 2 weeks ago, and all attendees had fun and performed very well. Civil rights team has covered 5 departments in their efforts to discuss bias-based language amongst students and in the classroom. Thoughtful, heavy, and necessary discussions were created in all meetings and are giving members of the team a good outlook on how to move forward with maybe introducing it to students too. The junior class is hosting a winter formal dance on February 10th from 6 to 9. Tickets are $10 a person. And I have a special shout out to the Great Works School in my report because I will be working on the set of The Little Mermaid, and they started their production today, and there are 34 kiddos in the production. And February month is Hawk Pride month. The only information that I've gathered so far, since not much has been rolled out to advisories, is that each pod has 4 or so big canvases, and classrooms are teaming up in a art competition to show what they love most about the school. So that concludes my report.
Thank you.
And that concludes my report as well.
Very good. We have had no correspondence upon which to report, which moves us into the report of the committees. Finance and Facilities will next meet on February 8th at 5:30, as you mentioned. Ed Policy did meet on the 25th, and I think we have a single first read later in our new business.
Yep.
What else
So
to
we
say?
have a single first read, and that is IKFB, which is about participation in graduation programs. And we'll get more into detail, but it covers the State of Maine Diploma Program. That was a COVID sort of program that was set up to make, sort of cover the loss of learning COVID issues. And then Student Gov President joined us at that meeting to discuss the student dress code. And there was lots of discussion around several different aspects of student dress. And so a subcommittee will be formed to work more on this. And those would be for changes to be effective next year. And then we just did a final review of the transgender and gender expansive student procedure.
Very cool.
Jim, can I add one other
Yes,
thing?
please.
Over the next month, you're going to start to see a policy around graduation requirements now, which is a little bit different than graduation participation in the ceremony. And so with the change in the master schedule, this created some more space. And so one of the areas that we're working really hard to address is just more health education. And so looking at adding a possible half of a credit requirement for health, which would really focus on drug and alcohol use, vaping, and really a lot of the response to the feedback that we're getting in the MIAS surveys. So next week, I would like to recommend, and obviously we can, when I meet with Joe to build the agenda, but Brett's going to be here doing a presentation with the school counselors. I think I would also like to have him kind of talk about some of the changes that he's talking about for potential graduation requirements, and also I wanted him to share the work that we're doing around the science curriculum. Last year we talked about adding some more opportunities in the science curriculum, so have him share some of that work. And then one other thought that he has around some dual enrollment opportunities at York County Community College. So, but that will all kind of tied together. And then also part of that is part of our conversation with the SRTC is that we are going to be getting a document saying that if you attend Sanford vocational program, if you're taking the graphics art program, people are awarded a graphic or a fine arts credit for the graphic arts program. Right now, we only allow elective credits to be earned through the high school, and so we're trying to get our information together to find out what other schools are doing, and also what recommendations the instructors who really are responsible for that content, what is their recommendation to us, and then we can meet on that to be able to start to figure out, are there some low-hanging fruits, the word I'm going to use. If you're in graphics design, obviously it would probably make sense to be able, you could get a fine arts credit. Would it be a stretch to say if someone were in a fire science program and they wanted to get half of a PE credit, there would be some logic to that. So those types, I don't want to get into does it qualify for physics 2, that's not the level of detail, but we just want to start with the common sense things to make access to the SRTC programs more readily available for our students. That's really the big idea. So.
That's good.
Yep.
Thank you.
Sorry, I just want to make sure I touched that.
Thank you.
That's great.
Okay. And then thirdly, wellness and SEL met earlier this evening, yes?
Yes, we did. So we met and had a very nice conversation about, Karen, who is our wellness coordinator, and has been working on the Virgin Pulse, discussed a $500 stipend that we have to spend on staff for wellness. And we just talked about different ideas, how this stipend can be used, possibly a wellness calendar where teachers and staff can participate, and then depending on their level of participation, they would be put into a raffle for rewards, and then also doing something for everybody, such as like a smoothie bar for each school, maybe on different days. There was a mention of possibly a coffee card a coffee like truck that would go around. And we talked about March as Health and Wellness Month. That would be the challenge from the Virgin Pulse would be in March. We talked about middle school is making May their Mental Health Awareness Month. Also, Cindy, who is guidance at Marshwood Middle, talked about a conference, the Maine School Winter Wellness Conference that she and Karen just went to, and it's the Maine School Winter Conference. They talked about Strengthen Me, Strengthen Maine, which is a initiative to support adult staff, teachers, healthcare workers who were present during COVID. And they are willing to travel to schools and also available via email or phone call for anybody who's interested in support, education, having somebody listen to them. So they're a group of licensed clinicians and apparently haven't had enough people participating. So they're reaching out and saying, we have this grant money and it's available, so please use it. So just thinking about ways to get this information out and to use them sounds great. They talk about all different kinds of workshops that they can offer around beating winter blues, dealing with shame, trauma, joy, stress management, managing boundaries, crisis debriefing, all kinds of really good stuff. We also talked about Nancy Rothstein, who is a sleep specialist from the Sleep Ambassador. She has a website, which led into a conversation about sleep stress, especially in our middle and high schoolers. Getting up really early has caused some problems with kids just not getting enough sleep, not getting enough meals, possibly skipping breakfast. And there may be a state law that gets passed this year, possibly, to increase the time which schools start across the state, which would be potentially great, but it's not always an easy thing to manage just with schedules and buses and sports, all kinds of things. So we also talked, again, briefly just about Gina Brodsky, who is involved in the Mattering Project, and we're still working on getting together and talking with her again. She's with Healthy Coalition, and she is going to be working with our middle school and high school teachers and counseling them. And brief discussion on how important the allied art teachers are, just because they get to see, in the middle school specifically, they get to see all of the students. It's a unique role because they get to see every student, not just, in 6th grade, but also 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. So, and just really important how they get a pulse on the student and where they're at. Devin Weber ran the Hawk Camp last week with approximately 40 staff and discussed wellness, and all the staff that were there were volunteers. It was very well received. I think that maybe covers most of it.
Awesome. You covered a lot of stuff.
Check plus.
It was a good
meeting.
discussion.
Yeah. Great, thank you.
Yep.
Comments or questions about any of that? All right, we'll move on then to new business. May I have a motion, please, to approve the first reading of IKFB?
I move to approve the first reading and discussion of policy IKFB, participation in graduation programs.
Second, Rebecca.
Rebecca, thank you.
So basically, as Jen said, this is a policy regarding the state of Maine diploma. So currently, we don't allow students without to march, and so this would make a caveat that if the state of Maine endorsed a diploma, students would march. They would not get a marshal diploma, they would get a state of Maine diploma.
Yep.
Inside the diploma, it would say that, maybe, it may not be the actual diploma, because that may come later, but it would be a certificate saying that they earned that diploma. I want to applaud the high school for really looking at this and looking at this differently when we have kids who, typical graduation with the Marshwood standards isn't going to be possible. Of trying to find a way to meet those minimum standards around, and a lot of it's the electives that are missed out, but it's still the math, it's the science, it's the social studies, to give them an option to be able to still graduate at this point in time. And so this is all part of the COVID relief plans that are in place. So I think this is a great opportunity for our students. I think we said 4 to 5 students right now. There may be a couple more, but these are kids that may be feeling like they have no other choice but to drop out or to leave to go to adult education, and so we want to avoid that at all costs. So I think this is a great bridge for a small number of students.
Good catch. Looks like most of the text on the second page is new to this policy. Is that where it's highlighted?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Why do I not see it here?
The language changes are awesome, the gendered ones.
Okay, any other comments or questions? All in favor? Okay, that's 5-0, thank you. We'll see this again next week, I guess.
Yes.
Good. We have a motion, please, around an overnight trip for the wrestling team. This is good.
Last minute addition.
Yeah.
I'll move we approve the Marshwood High School wrestling team to take an overnight to Rockland, Maine, February 23rd to the 24th, 2023.
Go ahead.
Second, Jen.
Okay.
So I appreciate your understanding. This is the last minute addition. The Wrestling Boosters reached out to Mr. Buzzell, I believe, on Monday evening saying, hey, we want to do this, and didn't let us know. And so we asked them to fill the forms out. The principal of the high school approved it. And so they would be going to the Class A state championship meet at, I think it's at Camden Rockport High School, which is about an hour and 45-minute ride. And so for those kids, that's a long haul. You know, weigh-ins might be at as early as 6:30 or 6 o'clock in the morning, and so you're probably talking about 5 a.m., 4 a.m.
Yeah.
departure time. So just makes a little bit more sense to be able to
Sure.
do this. So.
Comments, questions? Sounds good to me. All in favor? 5-0. Thank you. Go wrestling team.
It's great to see we have this because we didn't, last year, I think we were down to a really small number of wrestlers in the programs on a little bit of a participation swing back up, which is really nice to see.
Yep.
So,
That's great.
18, it said?
Yeah.
We're going to go? That's
Yeah.
good. That's awesome.
What does that mean, managers? Like, is it 18 kids? But what?
maybe like 16 wrestlers and 2 student managers who go in like for timers or
Oh.
those types of things, yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that was a thing.
Yeah. People have boppers to, when time's up,
Oh.
they tap you with a towel, and so sometimes the managers do all that stuff,
Oh,
so,
fun.
yep.
Okay, that concludes the new business and brings us to the building administrator check-in, and we have the lower grades. Tonight, who wants to go first?
Great. We have a lot of exciting things happening at Central. We had our PTO sponsored the wildlife encounters last week, which was it's just so much fun to, the kids could see tarantulas and all sorts of fennec fox, and so cute. So they had a lot of fun and learned a lot about animals. So thank you to our PTO. We have coming back again our art and literacy night coming up on February 16th, and our theme is going to be civility and kindness and building community. So it'll be a night where we're all reading a community read, and then have breakout stations for art that you can do as a family. So that'll be a lot of fun. So Brenda and Lisa O'Brien are planning that. And then our 100th day celebration is in full effect as well, collecting. We went back to, last few years have been just collecting money to give to the food pantry, but we went back to our original of every class, every grade has a different food item or pantry item that they're collecting, and every classroom is trying to get to 100. So there's little races to see who's going to get to the 100, and parents are bringing giant things of paper towels and napkins and mustard everywhere. So we have a huge donation to give to the food pantry. So that's all. Pam planning that with our local food pantry. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. Elliott Elementary School is really an exciting place the last 2 weeks. Last week, similarity awareness came in, and due to some of the cancellations, extended into this week. We combined similarity awareness, which is provided by Northeast Passage, which I've shared in the past with you, and many of you are familiar with it, as your kids have participated in the wheelchair experience, and then talking about the similarities and differences that people have, and it's an incredible experience to watch. The most impressive part of that experience is to listen to the kids' observations afterwards. That the observations cover what they see in school as differences amongst each other or similarities. Same holds true, they talk about their families, their cousins, folks in the community that they might know. It's really refreshing and encouraging, really. We combine that experience with our Kindness Week, which was wonderful. The kids participated in creating representations of kindness. For instance, they developed chains, and for each act of kindness, they put a loop in, and those were hung over the doors. And it was just a nice, positive message. Winter Story Walk, a resource provided by Winter Kids. If you're familiar with Winter Kids, which is a nonprofit in Maine. They provided us with placards, which we put around our campus. It was January 21st, it was a Saturday, and it was so much fun. We had several families show up. Meredith Siget, she facilitated the experience. It was also supported by our PEEPS organization, provided snacks and hot chocolate, hot cider. But it was just a great experience. Families showed up with their tube, sliding down and laughing and having fun. But the story walk was really neat, too. They'd go from placard to placard, reading a line from the book, and they traveled. Many of you have had that experience, but it was great. And finally, Jen Chamberlain, our art teacher at Elliott, organized the visit from a children's book illustrator named Gina Perry, who's worked on books about a character named Avon Green. Avon Green is a third grader who was born without arms, but feels that all the cells that were supposed to make her arms went to her super-powered brain instead. And I thought that was such a positive, strong message to our kids. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm gonna have to do what Peter and Nina do. They write the things down. I had 4 things, and I'm sitting over there and say, "Oh, what is that 4th one? I forgot it." So, bear with me. So one, like Nina or Peter said, I mean, there's always something going on at schools. Just always. So John talks about he doesn't want any more snow days. We want snow. Now, we don't want a snow day. It can be Friday or Saturday, but we have Winterfest next week. So it's like we took like what the elementary schools do is their, what do you call it, Monster Mile or whatever. That's their fundraiser. So what we did last year was we did toboggan racing. Okay, we didn't want to do exactly what the same thing they did, but we need some snow. So John, we really, I've got the kids doing.
Don't worry, I said it, now we're definitely going to get it.
I've got, the kids are doing snow dance, but to be, when you think of fundraising, I think you guys raised like 30,000 or something like that. I think we were last week. We were up to like 10 or 12,000, as a fundraiser. So these are really huge fundraisers. So, but we've got plan A, B, and C if we don't have snow. Second thing, this Friday, we're taking the kids, we believe that our kids should have a theater experience. And so before, we've had theaters come into school, and we've gone to theaters. And so last year, we went to the music hall. This year, we're going to the Merrill Auditorium on Friday, taking the entire school, and it's a Wabanaki. It's the five tribes, the 5 nations. And so we did a program on Indigenous People Day. We're really impressed with what's going on at the 3rd grade, because the kids are really coming with a lot of knowledge. And so it's a theater experience. How do you behave at a theater? But it's also with the Wabanaki studies. So we're really excited about that. And again, thanks to the PTO for being able to sponsor that. The other one is on Sunday, we had our Pottermore Club. And so I don't know if your kids were, so Pottermore was there. And so, just want you to know, this is an ed tech project. This isn't a teacher project. So Cindy Malone, every day for like 2 months, she kind of gives up her lunchtime for the kids to come in and make these. They become one of the houses, and what are the Gryffindor, all of these houses. So the kids are all in these houses, and then they come in on Sunday, and they just, the place is wild. The place the Great Work School turns into a castle. There's Quidditch. There's a Quidditch game in the gym that they've created. But Friday night, Saturday, all day Saturday, and Sunday, the ed techs are the ones that do this. It's unbelievable, and it takes a village. It really does, and so we really appreciate that. And there's another really important one. And as I get out in my car, I'm going to say I should have told them about this, but I can't remember. So I guess I'm showing my age.
Thank you. Okay, any last thoughts or comments from the board? I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move to adjourn tonight's meeting.
I'll second.
All in favor? That is 5-0. We are adjourned. Thank you all for